Boom, we're here for episode 60, reading about 10 minutes a day from the Anarchist Handbook, organized by Michael Malice. It's July 26th, again, episode 60, I can't believe it. And we're going to go ahead and kick right off on page 233 at the start of chapter 18, reading Morris and Linda Tannehill from The Market for Liberty. This was written in 1970. And here's Michael Malice's introductory paragraph. Though they never used the word anarchism, the Tannehill's book was the first to lay out what a competitive market for policing would look like. What had been a completely fringe concept at the time has become a commonplace position on many pockets of the internet, though still far from the mainstream. Here they lay out the question of what one school of anarchism would do in lieu of a government monopoly on policing. So here we go. Dealing with coercion. Throughout history, the means of dealing with aggression, crime, has been punishment. Traditionally, it has been held that when a man commits a crime against society, the government, acting as the agent of society, must punish him. However, because punishment has not been based on the principle of righting the wrong, but only of causing the criminal, quote, to undergo pain, loss, or suffering, it has actually been revenge. This principle of vengeance is expressed by the old saying, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which means, when you destroy a value of mine, I'll destroy a value of yours. Present-day penology no longer makes such demands. Instead of an eye or a tooth, or the tooth, it takes the criminal's life via execution, or a part of his life via imprisonment, and or his possessions via fines. As can be readily seen, the principle, vengeance, is the same, and it inevitably results in a compound loss of value. First the victims, then the criminals. Because destroying a value belonging to the criminal does nothing to compensate the innocent victim for his loss, but only causes further destruction. The principle of vengeance ignores and, in fact, opposes justice. When an aggressor causes the loss, damage, or destruction of an innocent man's values, justice demands that the aggressor pay for his crime, not by forfeiting a part of his life to society, but by repaying the victim for his loss, plus all expenses directly occasioned by the aggression, such as the expense of apprehending the aggressor. By destroying the victim's values, the aggressor has created a debt which he owes to the victim and which the principle of justice demands must be paid. With the principle of justice in operation, there is only one loss of value, and while the loss must initially be sustained by the victim, ultimately it is the aggressor, the one who caused the loss, who must pay for it. There is a further fallacy in the belief that when a man commits a crime against society, the government, acting as the agent of society, must punish him. This fallacy is the assumption that society is a living entity and that, therefore, a crime can be committed against it. A society is no more than the sum of all the individual persons of which it is composed. It can have no existence apart from or in contradiction to those individual persons. A crime is always committed against one or more persons. A crime cannot be committed against the amorphous non-entity known as society. Even if some particular crime injured every member of a given society, the crime would still have been committed against individuals, not society, since it is only the individuals who are distinct, separate, independent, living entities. Since a crime can only be committed against individuals, a crime cannot be rationally regarded as owing a debt to society, nor can he pay his debt to society. The only debt he owes is to the injured individual. Every dispute is between aggressors and victims. Neither society nor its members as a group have any direct interest in the matter. It is true that all honest members of a society have a general interest in seeing aggressors brought to justice in order to discourage further aggression. This interest, however, applies not to specific acts of aggression, but to the total social structure which either encourages or discourages acts of aggression. An interest in maintaining a just social structure does not constitute a direct interest in the solution of any particular dispute involving aggression. Because crimes cannot be committed against society, it is fallacious to regard government as an agent of society for the punishment of crime. Nor can government be considered to be the agent of the individual members of society, since these individuals have never signed a contract naming the government as their agent. There is, therefore, no valid reason for government officials to be designated the arbiters of disputes and rectifiers of injustice. Granted, we are used to the governmental punishment of a crime, so that to many people it seems, quote, normal and reasonable, and any other means of dealing with aggression seems suspicious and strange. But an unbiased examination of the facts shows that this governmental system is actually traditional rather than rational. Since neither society nor government can have any rational interest in bringing a specific aggressor to justice, who is interested? Obviously the victim, and secondarily those to whom the victim's welfare is of value, such as his family, friends, and business associates. According to the principle of justice, those who have suffered the loss from an aggressive act should be compensated at the aggressor's expense. And therefore, it is those who have suffered the loss who have an interest in seeing the aggressor brought to justice. The steps which the victim may morally take to bring the aggressor to justice and exact reparations from him rest on the right to property, which in turn rests on the right to life. A man's property is his property, and this fact of ownership is not changed if the property comes into the possession of an aggressor by means of an act of force. The aggressor may be in possession of the property, but only the owner has a moral right to it. To illustrate, suppose that as you come out of a building, you see a stranger in the driver's seat of your car preparing to drive it away. Would you have the moral right to push him and thus regain possession of your car by force? Yes, since the thief's temporary possession does not alter the fact that it is your property. The thief used a substitute for initiated force when he attempted to steal your car, and you are morally justified in using retaliatory force to regain it. Suppose that instead of catching the thief immediately, you are forced to chase him in your car for 2 blocks and only catch up with him as he's stopped by a train. Do you still have the right to push him out and regain your car? Yes, since the passage of time does not erode your right to possess your property. Suppose instead that the thief gets away, but that 2 months later you spot him downtown getting out of your car. You verify by serial number that it is indeed your car. Do you have the moral right to drive it away? Yes, again, the passage of time makes no difference to your property rights. Suppose that instead of yourself, it is the detective you have hired to recover the car who spots the thief getting out of it. The detective, acting as your agent, has the right to repossess your car, just as you would. You find that a front fender and headlight of your car are smashed in due to the aggressor's careless driving. Repairs cost you $150. Do you have the right to collect this amount from the aggressor? Yes, you are the innocent victim of an act of aggression. It is the thief, not the victim, who is morally obliged to pay all costs occasioned by his aggression. To summarize, the ownership of property is not changed if the property is stolen, nor is it eroded by the passage of time. The theft, damage, or destruction of another person's property constitutes an act of coercion, and the victim has a moral right to use retaliatory force to repossess his property. He also has a right to collect from the aggressor compensation for any costs occasioned by the aggression. If he wishes, the victim may hire an agent or agents to perform any of these actions in his place. It should be noted that aggression often harms not only the victim, but also those who are closely associated with him. For example, when a man is assaulted and seriously injured, his family may be caused expense as well as anxiety. If he is a key man in his business, his employer or his partners and or his company may suffer financial loss. All this destruction of value is a direct result of the irrational behavior of the aggressor. And since actions do have consequences, the aggressor has the responsibility of making reparations for these secondary losses, as well as for the primary loss suffered by the victim. There are practical limits to the amount of these secondary reparations. First, no one would bother to make such a claim unless the reparations he hoped to be paid were substantial enough to offset the expense, time, and inconvenience of making the claim. Second, the total amount of reparations which can be collected is limited by the aggressor's ability to pay, and first consideration goes to the victim. For the sake of simplicity, only the victim's loss will be dealt with here, but all the principles and considerations which apply to him, as well as to any others who have suffered a direct and serious loss as a result of the aggression. And we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there, about a third of the way down on page 237. Again, reading 10 minutes or so a day from the Anarchist Handbook organized by Michael Malice. Hope to see you back.